So, hi everyone, I'm Peter from UX Design Team, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you, finally, at least a couple of you in person after a couple of months. And I think that many of you are familiar with Kentico, what we do, but let me just plug in short introduction. Kentico is a Czech software company, and we're developing content management solutions for more than 15 years now. And currently we have two products, Kentico Experience and Kentico Content. And for both of these products, the user experience is one of the biggest differentiators or biggest selling points and competitive advantages we have in the market. For me personally, it has been a very big pleasure to work with and to learn from many talented and driven and truly mature members of the design team. And let me plug in this obvious thing, like if there's anybody in the audience looking for a new opportunity to grow and learn, we're looking for a new designer for our Kentico Experience division. So if you want, just please don't hesitate to ask any of us, me or Tada or Anička over there, anything you would like to know, or just visit our website. And as I mentioned, great team. We also have a great leader, VP of UX, TADEÁŠ, and whose both design and managerial experience is quite crucial to our success in the company. And it's a great pleasure to have him here as a speaker tonight, and of course to be able to pick his brains afterwards. So please just go for Slido over there and use the hashtag Design Hour, and just plug in any question you might have during the talk, and he'll go through that in the end. And if you need a connection, there's a Wi-Fi and password over there, and please help yourself to any refreshments or anything you might need. So now, without further ado, welcome TADEÁŠ KUBÁT.
Okay, hello everyone. Great to have you all here and online. My name is TADEÁŠ, and I'm in charge of user experience on Kentico Content. So feel free to follow us, join me on LinkedIn or whatever. As Peter said, we will use Slido with this hashtag to collect questions, and we will go through them at the end. And now I will start with the presentation itself. I'll be talking about, obviously, how UX can make a bigger impact in a company. It is something I had struggled with earlier, or in the past, in this company and in other companies I worked for. So I have some experience with it. Fortunately, some time ago, we did certain changes in Kentico Content product development that dramatically improved how UX department impacts the rest of the company and experience of our users, of course. So that's what I would like to share with you today. And to explain it properly, I will have to go to the past for a bit to make you understand how and why things worked the way that they did and why we changed them. So it should provide some more context. There will be a lot of talking about processes and business and goals and maybe KPIs, not that much about design for this design hour, sorry. But nevertheless, it is very important, because one thing I figured out is that optimizing UX department to make bigger impact will only get you so far. Yeah? If you want to do real impact, you need to optimize the context, the environment where the UX department operates. But I will get there eventually. It's not going to be short presentation, sorry. So one more bit of context before we start. This is important because some of you might be working in agencies or in B2C companies, and the context might be different. Some things might not apply. So Kendico is a software development company. We have 2 digital products that we have been developing for years, and they are still not done and never will be until anyone will be paying for them. So that's important. We have 2 products, as Peter already mentioned, experience and the content. And we are also operating in a business-to-business environment, which means that our customers are other companies, not private users who would use our products for their personal use. So it also means, by the way, that in B2B, there is usually someone who decides that we are going to use this product, and someone else who then has to use the product. So it has some implications. Cool. So let's get started, and I will start with a story. There will be more stories to come. So there's this one designer who is not here today, so I at least hope he's online. But he's been attending our sessions, our design hours so far, and he often talks to me about how to start with UX, what to do, and basically wanted some advice that I tried to give. But eventually, he landed a job here in Brno in another software development company, and he was basically first designer and only designer there. Yeah. So when that happened, he again came to me and asked what he should do, like how he should introduce UX to the company. So I advised him some low-hanging fruit things that he might be doing. And when I met him after some time, he told me, okay, I've been doing usability testing, we've discovered lots of issues, I've tried to recruit these users on user research and stuff, and I started designing with development teams. So far so good, but he also told me that he struggles with making the actual changes happen. Yeah? Findings from usability testing are not implemented. Blockers from the flow are not removed. Lots of his designs gets like deprioritized and thrown away. So most of his work got very low priority in development. Yeah, so he told me, like, what should I do? How do I convince the development to implement more changes that I design? Well, he could try to convince development. There's lots of resources on convincing stakeholders to invest more into UX. And it is an important skill to have. It needs to be used in the right context. So would it be a solution? Let's say that this designer would manage to totally convince product management, development, whatever, to do everything that he said. Would it work? Would it be enough to have great UX? Well, no. It would not be enough in the long term. It would help to fix some glaring issues, but it would not work for the company as a whole. So that's why it is not happening. It's not because stakeholders don't want UX. Yeah, it's because it has some more deeply rooted problem, and this the fact that UX is getting lower priority is just a symptom of that problem. So what could be the larger problem? Thing is that UX basically must not own UX goals for the company. Yeah, UX team typically cannot be is not able to be responsible for improving UX in the product, in the company, wherever. I'll tell you why after many slides. So the problem is systemic, yeah? Because when the company decided to invest into user experience, they created UX department and told them improve UX user experience, yeah? But that is not enough. If the company really wants great UX or improve UX in their product, then everyone involved in the product must act to improve UX. That's obvious. But still, the stakeholders, the processes expect that some other department will do it for them. Thing is that to make the true impact on the user experience, you must look outside of the box and outside the box of your department, and instead change the environment, as I already said. You need to change how whole product development works, because what you've been doing now doesn't work, so you have to do something differently, and not just you. So just to repeat these pictures, I will get to details a bit later. But imagine that your work is a game, any game you want, and you are a player. Yeah, so you may try playing the game better, faster, whatever, but maybe the game has rules that only allow you to have small impact on the actual results. So in that case, playing better won't help you. Yeah? You need to change the rules of the game to have impact. Are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to change how product development works, how the game is planned? Well, the current rules are not some kind of unchangeable physical law. It's just basically that some guys in charge of product development said, this is how we are going to do things. And that's why they are doing the things. Yeah? So if you convince them to do things differently, they will do things differently. Obviously, but although it's logical, it's also sounds easier said than done. Yeah. So how could you do this huge mind shift for you and for the rest of the development? Before I tell you how, I will tell you why you need to do it and why they need to do it. Yeah. So why you UX people need to let UX go, and in order to make it great. So I will start with a little anecdote, another story. So some time ago, the company wanted to create a tool for marketing teams, for campaign management, that would help marketers to be more effective, productive, whatever. So before designing anything, we started to do research, basically who needs the tool, why do they need it, what tasks they have, to get all the context, to understand their jobs, their motivations, so we might be able to identify where we should help them. We were talking with a lot of marketing roles, from the most basic campaign executive specialists to CMO, chief marketing officer levels. And eventually we got to a question which has maybe obvious answer. And the question was what is the purpose of online marketing department in companies? Why do they have online marketing at all? It's not because they would love doing marketing. Maybe they do, but that's not the core. It is because they need marketing, the company needs the marketing in order to do business, to achieve its business goals. Without marketing, they wouldn't be visible to customers, they would get less deals, less business, they might even go out of business. So, and and this is easy to see with marketing. They invest into some activities. Those activities generate some demand, and then the demand is then transformed into deals through sales department, perhaps. I'm simplifying. But what I want to say is that when company has marketing department, they can expect that when they put money into marketing department, it will generate some demand, some deals, some business, basically. So, by the way, ideal marketing tool, as we found out, wouldn't really help marketers, but it would help businesses to replace the marketing department by that tool. But fortunately, we are very far from there. But who knows with those AIs? Yeah, but I digress. So companies do business. Yeah, that's the takeaway. Companies have various departments, employees to help them with their business goals. That's clear. So, question: why do companies have UX departments? It's because they expect that when they will have good UX, great UX, best UX in the world, it will help them achieve their business objectives. It's not because they would love doing or spending money on designers. Yeah? It's because there should be some business results behind UX. But finding out how actually UX impacts the business, like what the return of investment is there in product development, is usually quite difficult, especially in B2B, yeah, where you are not just measuring conversions in your shopping cart or whatever. It's also near impossible, maybe, or is it? It's not easy. But it is certainly doable with some changes in the processes I will get to. But it is also one of the key arguments for the stakeholders to change the rules of the game. Yeah? I will get to that too. For now, just don't forget what the purpose of UX department in the company is. Yeah? It's to help meet the business goals. So this brings me to another question that will take very long to answer. So how can UX make a bigger measurable impact on the business? Yeah? Well, it will have to do something differently, that's for sure. So let's take a look at the environment where the UX department operates. Let's quickly go through how the product development typically works, or it had worked here and in some previous companies. So it's like from my experience mostly. This is one of the definitions of like UX, that like user experience, that there are three main groups in product development: product management, development, and UX team. Together, each bring in some of their knowledge, and together they create the desired user experience. Yeah? Product people tell what the market needs, designers tell what the users need, how it can be merged together, and developers will figure out how to solve it technically. But it's not that easy because in reality, the product manager usually has a long list of features that they need to get to customers. Yeah? They might have features required by product strategy, features requested by current customers, features requested by potential customers, maybe features requested by UX to improve UX, features requested by development to reduce technical debt, and they need to balance all the things together. And they have very little time to do all these features. From development point of view, developers get constantly asked, like, when is this going to be finished? Yeah? Because, and that's important, developers are actually the only ones from this trio who can deliver any tangible value. They are the only ones who can change the product, who can create something that can be shipped and sold. So everyone is asking them like, why is it taking so long? What are you doing? And product manager is coming to them with a huge list of features. They see that they need to tackle their own technical debt, fix bugs, and then UX people come to them and say, yeah, come to this user research, join these design workshops, yeah, spend this time with us, even though they have this huge backlog of features. And UX people, they usually have two responsibilities. One is improving the UX, that's like the wider responsibility, and then they need to support the development. Development wants to work on some features, so UX prepares, researches, and prepares design for them. What usually happens with these designs is that they get estimated by developers and they get cut to little pieces, and most of those pieces get like thrown away, which generates wasted time and unhappy designers and bad user experience. So in the end, it actually looks more like this. Yeah? Development is swamped in features, and they basically try to cram in whatever they want, but they just don't have the time. So even if UX convince them to turn some of those features into UX features, it wouldn't really be the systemic solution required in the long term. So why is this happening? Is it because product managers and developers don't care about UX? Well, they do care about UX. They just don't have time to do something with UX. Maybe they don't know the customers and users very well. Maybe they are missing this empathy. And maybe if we get them closer to the users, they will prioritize user features over the other features. Well, it will certainly help, but again, only symptoms. It's not the root cause. Yeah. So why is there so little time to do all these things, and why do I keep saying that there is no time, basically? Well, when you are at work, yeah, doing your job, you probably have some goals. You might even have some KPIs. That KPIs might have some targets that you need to meet or hit, like this month, this week, whatever. And that's your primary concern, because if you hit your targets, you are doing a good job. Yeah? And hitting these targets usually takes vast majority of your time, because otherwise you wouldn't be optimally utilized resource. Yeah? So hitting your targets takes most of your time, and that leaves very little time to do activities that are not tied to your primary goals, like improving UX, for example. So what I'm trying to say is that product managers and developers don't have improving UX in their goals, so they don't have time to improve UX, basically. Of the three departments, only usually UX has UX-related goals, as I already said. Goals of the product managers are typically to ship certain number of features in a given time. Yeah? They might need to implement feature 1 to be better than competitor, or feature 2 and 3 to help our existing customers or potential customers or whatever. But their goal is to get these features implemented to enhance the product, to make it better as they believe it is better. But the developer's goal is even more important here, because, as I said earlier, developers are the only ones capable of actually changing or creating anything in the product. So their goal is usually to implement those features that product manager gives them in the requested or required amount of time. Yeah. Also, developers are usually the biggest group of these three. There's usually one product manager, one designer, and then some amount of developers, which also makes them most expensive. Therefore, developers are often treated as a machine in a factory, really. So imagine you own a factory and you buy a machine that produces chairs, for example. So this machine is quite expensive to run. So you wanted to produce as many chairs in as little time as possible, yeah? Because otherwise it doesn't have the return of investment. So as a director of this factory, you just want to make sure that the machines are properly fed with designs, materials, whatever, that they are maintained properly so they can run without stopping, because when the machine stops creating chairs, there is nothing to sell, and that is a problem. So the machine would probably, or someone in charge of the machine would have a KPI on like for a certain number of chairs that needs to be produced every day, every week. Yeah? And their top priority would be to hit their target, because that would mean that they are doing a good job. And doing anything else than producing those chairs would be bad for their KPIs. So that is what I have seen in many development processes. Yeah? Developers are measured on how many features or stories they deliver and how few bugs they generate. And product managers are usually only there to make sure that developers are working on the right features, and designers to make sure that they don't have to spend time on researching or designing those features, but they can spend the time on actually implementing them. Because when they are the only ones who can implement the features, why would they waste time with everything else? So if they wanted to improve UX, it would mean fewer features, which would be very bad for their goals in the current setup. So therefore, I repeat what I said earlier, that the UX department cannot be responsible for UX of the product, because we cannot do the changes required to improve UX ourselves, and others like developers don't have time for that, because they need to spend the time on hitting their goals, which is difficult enough already. So everyone involved in the product must act to improve UX, and I hope it makes a bit more sense now. We have still a lot of ground to cover. So as I said, I mean it when I say everyone needs to act to improve UX, but still only the development is able to actually do the change. Ergo, developers or development must have goals that involve UX metrics. And product managers and UX people, since they are unable to directly do something, do changes to influence the goals, they just need to help meet those goals. Yeah? But only developers can actually own the goals for improving UX and be responsible for them. So how do you get there? How do you make development owners of user experience? And I don't mean some specific metrics like system usability score or these very experience-y tied metrics, but I mean like adoption, retention, and other stuff. So what benefits does this change have, and is it even worth the effort? Yeah, we actually underwent this transformation some time ago. We converted the last development team like 6 months ago and started with the change a year ago. So I can now tell you where it got us, and you can decide for yourselves whether something like that would be worth for you, your company, or something. So first, I need to explain how we got to the bad spot. Yeah? How we got to the spot where UX was bad and we weren't able to change it, to improve it, and how we then got transformed to something else. Some years ago, we only had a single product, Kintico Experience. It had a different name, that doesn't matter. And basically, we decided that we wanted to create another one. So we created internal startup team, and this team operated in this lean startup methodology. It's very agile, very customer market oriented, full of research methodology. There's lots of prototyping and validations and stuff. And the team eventually iterated to a new product, to a concept of headless CMS, which was super new at the time. Almost no one did it. So they were also able to validate it with the market, with some potential customers. So we had a working prototype of our product, and we also had customers that wanted to buy that product. It was cool, but it was still just a prototype product. Yeah? It wasn't prototyped like in some extra design tool, but it did things, but it didn't do things well enough for enterprises to spend thousands of dollars every month. So there were some missing incomplete features and things from the prototype era that we had to deliver before we would be able to get those enterprise customers. And we also wanted to do it very fast, which was the worst thing, because like we had we were ahead of the competition basically, and we wanted to exploit that and to get the good product on the market before our competition. So we decided to scale the development up rapidly, but while having 3 people working in an agile way worked very well, having suddenly 30 people, pushing them in within weeks and hoping that they would learn something from the other team and that they would be able to work with such freedom and accountability as the others did not work. Yeah? Everyone was just arguing how, what should be done, but nothing got done, like nothing. So it was chaos. So we said, let's impose some order. Yeah? Let's create some processes. We meant well, obviously, but we optimized for the wrong thing. Our reasoning was, we have this great opportunity, customers, missing features, and developers. Yeah? So there was a lot of missing features, lots of developers, and not that much time before the competition would probably catch up. So we wanted to utilize developers to the fullest, yeah? And that means basically let developers do the thing that only they can do, implement features. And we eventually slaved everything to basically treat them as a machine and make sure that the machine would never stop. So for example, because if developers wouldn't have anything to design, if they didn't know what feature to do, they wouldn't be developing features. Yeah, that would be bad. So we even had a KPI that was called backlog readiness, and basically every development team had a goal that they need to have prepared designs for 3 sprints ahead. Like if for any reason their designer would just vanish, they would still have, the machine would still have 6 weeks of work ahead of them that they would just comfortably implement. It made great sense at the time, seriously, but really, what were we thinking? This, among other things, led to feature bloating, because when everyone wanted to make sure that the developers need to have long backlog of prepared features, then the features usually started to get bigger and bigger, because you can prepare 3 features in a month, but that takes new research, new designs and stuff. Or you can have one feature that gets developed for half a year, but you only do research and stuff once. So the features started to grow a lot, and it was very terrible for everyone. So it was terrible for product managers, because they had to suddenly cram lots of larger and larger features into small amount of time. It was terrible for developers, because they always saw this huge amount or huge backlog of designed features that everyone was just asking, when are you going to do it? And would you, for example, improve UX when you are at it? No, there was no time. There was no time to reduce technical depths, basically to do anything else, just features. For UX people, it was terrible too, because we had to design larger and larger pieces of functionality, larger flows, much more screens, everything. But we had to do it right first time, because there were no iterations. Yeah? I'll get to that. What was also bad was that when we designed this huge feature, it got estimated, it got cut in half, and one half would just be thrown away, because we weren't able to spend a year on developing this feature, only half a year. So weeks of the designer's work would just be thrown away. More importantly, it was terrible for our customers, yeah, because they had to wait super long for any product change. We had some prospect customers. We promised that we will develop some feature for them. We had some existing customers who needed us to do something, but they had waited like at least a year for every such change, yeah? Because when the features had such a huge scope, it just took time before we got to their feature. But fortunately, the customers were very keen or with like giving us their feedback. They were very, very happy talking to us. So since the product, they weren't very happy with the product, they wanted to tell us. So they told us, and we carefully like recorded what could be implemented, what could be fixed. We had this intercom product board, so we tagged stuff, yeah, prioritized, and then ignored everything, because there was just this huge pile of features that basically doing anything else than features, like improving all the features, was unthinkable. So we weren't able to act or react in for customers like in any way, and we were still thinking that we are doing agile. So what caused all this? Basically, when we try to organize the development out of the chaos, we have sidetracked the most important thing, our users. And I say users, and I mean users/customers, yeah? Just to simplify things. Basically, we killed the feedback loop to utilize the developers more effectively. Yeah? We cut off the only people who can do the product from the people that use it and are paying for it. Yeah? I didn't find better meaning, sorry. So, yes, product managers and UX people still had plenty of contact with our users and our customers, but all this contact just boiled down into what feature should be developed next in the long queue, and what the first design of the feature should be. So without the feedback loop, problem is without the feedback loop, you cannot tell what the scope should be. Yeah, because let's take this random feature. let's say you talk to customer, you do jobs to be done, you map the roles, their jobs, everything, and they tell you this is must-have scope. This is the minimal that the scope needs to be. But actually, their minimal scope is this. Yeah, it's much smaller, and usually they don't see some things until they try to use it. So what actually happened with our development was that what we delivered after like 6 months of development and 3 months of research and design, it took us very long, and it still did not solve basic customer needs. So obviously customers weren't very happy. And even though there was lots of research by product management, by UX, lots of usability testings and whatever, it still always ended in the way like this. So why did it not work? Yeah? The first thing is that customers always say that everything is must-have, even though they don't know what is must-have. And it's partially caused by the B2B environment, because people who are buying the product are not usually the ones using the product, so they don't have all the context, they don't know all the things that are important. So they think they need this, but the actual users would know that they need something a bit different. But more importantly, what we have verified like many times over is that it's impossible to tell what you need until you use the thing on some kind of real project. Yeah. That's why we spent many weeks on researching and designing a feature. Then there were months till it got implemented and launched. Then there were days until unhappy customers told us what is missing and when is it going to be added. But they always thought that it's going to be fixed in the second iteration, right? No, because iterating on the one feature means fewer other features done. So we were not iterating until there was like some serious bug that completely prevented using the thing. Yeah. So there was no time for second iterations. Over time, we could see that user experience was not as good as we thought. When we started with the new product, we had high hopes. We also saw that customer satisfaction was not soaring. Both were actually quite low and dropping. We saw that, and every department tried to improve it on their level. Yeah? Product managers tried to do even better user research, customer research, market research, use even better framework for prioritizing work. Developers try to budget some time into implementing some user UX improvements, and we try to do like even better validations. We set some metrics for usability testing. We set benchmarks, but it did not help. Because each department was optimizing just its own thing, but not the root cause. We just did not see it for a while. We even thought about the feedback loops at the time, yeah? But we always ended up saying, but we do have feedback loops. Yeah? We have research, we have lots of customers talking to us on intercom, we have everything tagged in product board, it's automatically imported and whatever. So that's the feedback loop, but it was never closed, and when the feedback loop is not closed, it doesn't exist. So eventually we did see the change. It was after like frustrating period where we were trying to optimize our departments and nothing helped. So when I saw the problem myself, I brought it to other stakeholders, to head of product management and head of development, And to my pleasant surprise, they also saw the problem and wanted to change it. So that was great. And our key premise for change from that state was that this situation is not sustainable for us, because we weren't gaining enough customers as we needed, and it had millions of problems. We were investing huge amounts of time into scope that customers did not need, and we didn't actually know precisely. There was not enough time to actually invest into the scope that customers did need, because we didn't know what exactly they need. They didn't know themselves. So another kicker was that we didn't have any reliable data on feature usage. We weren't, for example, we've invested like 6 months into developing this feature, and how many customers, how many users are actually using it? How often? What if only 10% of the feature is used regularly or at all? What if 90% was never touched? And what if that 10% of feature is used by 3 people only? Was the 6 months of development worth the investment? We didn't know even these numbers. We had some tracking. Our product is running in a cloud, so we can track everything, but we didn't implement too much tracking in the beginning because of features were more important. So we didn't know whether we are wasting time or not, or we kind of knew that we are wasting time, we just didn't know how much. And actually, if we were wasting time, we were wasting it twice, because first waste is you develop a thing that is not used, and the second waste is that you could have done something that would actually be used in that first wasted time. So it's time twice wasted, and it was very bad. So we decided we must change how we do the product, how the whole product development process works. It was pretty clear for us that the change needs to be fast, and therefore will have to be big. We were thinking about incremental optimizations, but we couldn't find any that would actually have impact. It would just have to be a bigger step. So we defined some key attributes at the time, and they still apply today. The first one is that we wanted to introduce some business-oriented goals to development. And when I say business-oriented goals, I don't mean sell this many enterprise subscriptions or something. I mean business-oriented as in adoption, retention, satisfaction, task success, and others. And we wanted to have these goals for each feature. Teams would no longer focus on outputs, for example, how many things they deliver, but they would focus on outcomes. They would focus on changing users' behavior or attitude. Output is feature delivered. Outcome is happier user or more productive user. That's small thing in wording, but big mindset change. And anyway, we developed the product to make it a better, more valuable tool for our customers. So we want them to use the features to be more productive, to be happier, and to recommend it to their colleagues, and not to have more features. To frame the goal, we use the OKRs framework, which is the best framework for goals that I have ever seen. It's excellent also for designers. So if you don't know OKRs, look them up. Example how one such OKR looks like. This is from our development right now. So the objective for development team, for actual 3 developers, their objective is we want more companies to do content reviews in our product, in Kenzico content, because of some business reasons. So that's the objective. And key results, how do we know that we are getting closer to that objective? So, for example, if 2/3 of our enterprise customers use or adopt their review-related features like comments, suggestions, tasks, that they are properly using, they are properly doing the reviews in our product. And we even had some shorter-term one when we introduced a tasks functionality to make the organizing the reviews easier. So we wanted we wanted 20% of our users to use the tasks feature regularly, because this goal is very different from implement task feature, because you implement it and it's done. But does it work? Does it work? How did it change customers' jobs? So the objective, you need to think about it differently if you want to make outcome of it, because some high-level strategy would be to maybe get more users from a single company into our product. Because in the past, and that's with many content management systems, the content writing and reviewing takes place somewhere else, and then only one person goes to the content management system, copy-pastes the final text, and publishes it. And we wanted more users from a single company to work with our product. So we wanted them, and that's a long-term goal, we want them to move most of their, or ideally all, their content creation process into our product. So this is something that is very connected to business, because if 2/3 of our enterprise level customers are doing their reviews, it brought us some users into, and users are paid in our subscription, so it actually can bring money, because if we get more enterprise customers and their users will also jump in on doing reviews in our product, then it will generate even more money. So that's why OKRs are such a powerful framework, because it's not just sell this many plans in this time, but it's change something, and how do you know that you've accomplished or you are getting close to the change. So yeah, that's how we connected development goals to actually business goals. Yeah, and suddenly developers find themselves supporting sales goals, and they can see real impact of their work. The second point is team autonomy and also accountability. Because to be able to work with business-oriented goals, we need teams that can make decisions on their own. Not just people who will take specification and create a feature, but our teams must be able to investigate an opportunity or a problem, design some solution, define their goals on solving that problem, implement it, validate it, iterate on it until it is done. And they need to be able to do thousands of decisions along the way. Yeah, because even if developers are not working this way, they still do thousands of decisions, but they are just doing them to ship the feature, not to affect the user. Each team is led by an experienced developer. There's no longer any Scrum Master or Product Manager or other people manager in charge of the development team. It's a developer. The most senior one, we call the role technical leader. And that's because only developers can change the product. So they need to decide and be responsible on what they do. To support this, we have very small development teams. We had teams of 8 to 10 developers and then the supporting roles. now we only have technical leader and 2 or 3 more developers, and they form the core team. It's because to keep the conversations simple, to keep the team agile, and to not waste technical leaders, most experienced developers' time by doing people manager stuff, because it doesn't help to deliver any outcomes. So the teams are smaller, they are more agile, so they can communicate better. And under optimal circumstances, we have even found out that this smaller team, half of the regular development team, actually has 80% of speed or velocity of the larger team. So if we split the large team into 2, we suddenly have 160% of velocity. So 2 small teams under ideal conditions work much faster than a single team. And by ideal conditions, I mean when you have 3 developers and 2 of them take vacation, the other one doesn't do anything, just fixes bugs and do something small. So, but digress. And then there are some supporting roles like UX designer and product manager, but they are not technically under the technical leader. They have their own bosses, they have their own teams, and they just support. They help the development teams to move forward whatever is needed from them. Another key point is that we wanted to connect the people that do the product to the users again. So even though our developers don't need to know how to lead interview, how to moderate design workshops, they still participate on them, on all of them. Maybe not all developers attend all interviews, but every customer interview, every usability testing session, every interaction with a customer, there is one of the developers there just listening or maybe taking notes, asking questions. So this is super important to get them empathy and also to give them the customer's context, because so until that point only PMs and UX people had it. Now data. We needed to have usage data on everything and everyone in our product, and even though we are in the cloud and are able to track anything, everyone, anyhow we want, because they signed our terms and conditions, it still took us months to implement tracking and reporting. So we can now truly see how each feature is adopted, what retention it has on user level, and we also see it on customer level. So we can see that these companies, our customers, are using these features while other companies are not using them. And then we can react. Maybe we can tell our customer success teams or our marketing teams, like, hey, connect with those customers who are not using the product and find out why they are not using this feature when it works very well for our customers. Or marketing, connect with these customers who actually are using the feature and use them to promote the feature or the product, because they are using it, they have retention, they are satisfied with it, so they are happy. So that was super important to get, because without having business-oriented data like adoption and stuff, we wouldn't be able to set any business-oriented goals, because you always get only what you measure. And last point here is iterations, because having the right goals, organization, and data would not automatically solve our issues if our tactics, if the execution stayed the same. If we spent 6 months on the feature and never iterated it. So we wanted our developers and designer and product manager to understand customers and offer them the smallest possible solution. Not whole solution they need, but the smallest possible thing that will at least solve some part of the problem for it. And we need to get it to them very fast, and then we need to gather feedback whether we are going the right direction or whether we should be doing something different at all, because we didn't understand them or something. So we need to give them the smallest thing just to learn where we should go next, iterate on it, and basically repeat this process until the goals are met, or until we say, okay, it doesn't bring us anything else, let's do something different, let's try to solve this business objective using a different functionality or different way. So to sum it up, business-oriented goals, team autonomy, small teams, knowing the user's context, data, and iterations. So that's what we wanted to achieve. We eventually did achieve it. It works very well. But how did we get there? How did we get there? First discussions started like a year ago. It was summer, or no, not a year ago, 2 years ago actually, summer 2018. And that's when we decided, okay, we need to change. We defined these principles roughly, and in fall 2018, we had first proposals of how the new process would look like. So we started to do feedback loops with our people, with product managers, with developers, and there was pushback. Lots of pushback because, well, some of it was good. There were things that we did improve, and some of it was just very fear of the change. Yeah? We discovered that no matter how well we present what is going to change, we will never cover job of each individual person. Yeah? So they still couldn't truly imagine what will change, and that caused fear. And the whole new process was just too different and too alien for them. So we spent months like doing these or walking in circles. But then we decided to bite the bullet and just do the pilot on one of the teams. That was in spring last year, 2019. Yeah. By the way, I should start using some names here. The old development process, the old one, the bad one, the one I've been talking about so far, was called very descriptively product development process. Exactly like that. So we called the new one with a similar level of imagination, and it's called a product development process 2. It's stuck. It's PDP2. So back to the pilot of PDP2. It was running, not very smoothly. It required a very big change of mindset for each role. So what changes were required? For product managers, they no longer decided what features and what stories in that feature, basically what scope is going to be done and what is going to be deprioritized into oblivion. No more. Now developers and especially technical leaders would suddenly need to take part in decision making and even have the final word in things or in matters that they had no experience in before. And for example, goal setting for them was especially difficult at the time because at the time we didn't have yet implemented all the data measuring systems. So we didn't know all the adoptions and such. So when we were defining goals, we were asking, okay, that would be a good goal, but can we measure it? We need different goals. But that was a pilot. UX people were quite happy, actually, in the pilot, at least what I remember. Because we were still doing what we were used to. We were talking to customers, designing features, but we were just doing it now for iterations, not for one big scope, but we had kind of to forget the big thing and just focus on the smallest step and maybe one, 2, 3 more steps into very close future, very near future, and design just that. So it got much smaller, much faster. And there, around that time, the UX started to feel like more integral to the process, yeah? Because deciding and designing what should be the first thing, what it should do, and then how it should look like, is super important in this process. And so. So we kind of waded through the first pilot, and there were no total blockers that would like cause us to abandon the process completely, although some great colleagues still left the company because they disagreed with the changes we were doing. But we still decided to switch everyone to the PDP2. The full transition took each team about 3 months, but there eventually we were doing several teams at once. There's like 12 teams on Kentico content, small ones. It got much easier over time because the additional teams could learn from the teams that were already transformed or converted, from product managers that were already working with those converted teams and designers. But it still took roughly 3 months for each team, even at the end. I believe since beginning of the year, we are all on PDP2, and I don't think anyone would want to move back, actually. Because, yeah, let's take a look at what the change bring us. Let's start from the customers, because customers and users are really in the center. So from their point of view, we deliver new functionality like blazingly fast. Yeah, like that's because we are delivering smaller scope, but much more fitted and more often. Yeah, it's not like now we need to wait 6 months for this feature to be done, and until we release it in 6 months, it's not there, it doesn't exist. But now it's like there's a month and there's first part of the feature, then another month there's second part of the feature. So the feature can still be done for 6 months, but it's evolving. Yeah? And if it makes sense, if it brings business results, then why not do it 6 months? So, but we are still, the main point here was the speed. Every time we basically release every 2 weeks at the latest, and there are new features every 2 weeks. And also, we are not working harder or faster. We are still working in the same way, except there's not such a big push on new features, obviously. It's just that we release more often, and since we have more smaller teams, we can do more things in parallel. So that also adds up. We are also able to react very quickly to user feedback, because when we give them an iteration of the functionality, first iteration, some iteration, they get to, we are still pretty much working a lot on the functionality. So whatever they tell us, what should be changed, gets implemented right away, basically, or very soon. So when we released another iteration or something in a month, it's already there, and it's even better than customers wanted it. Yeah, it's no longer like backlog of feedback that is categorized somewhere, but it's direct feedback to what is being done, and it's being addressed right now. From business point of view, we are able to react to market demands with much greater flexibility. If we decide that we need to put half of the development to something because there is some opportunity on the market, like to do some collaboration features because of COVID situation and people needed to collaborate remotely, then we can easily see, okay, these teams, their iterations end here, so we will let them finish their iterations, and they will not start new iterations on their goals, but they will switch gradually to new goals. Yeah? So within a month, we can still release what was being worked on, but we can completely change direction on what is needed. We still have very good velocity. Like it's not like when we have half the team, it takes twice as much time to deliver anything. It's because we just deliver smaller and more fitted solutions. And we have clarity on product development from business point of view and on some kind of return of investment. Yeah? We don't have reports on like this change in the product cost this much adoption and therefore brought us this many dollars, but we can tell whether it is successful or not, and that's also mostly thanks to OKRs. From product manager's point of view, there's no more backlog micromanagement. Yeah? That's all done by the team. Product managers don't touch backlogs anymore, and they focus on strategic goals, like should the product move this way, should we do features for this vertical or this user persona or something, because it would help more our strategy. When they are working with teams, they provide business context, like, okay, it's great to have this functionality, but to have the return of investment, you need to get this much adoption or something. Yeah? So your goal must look like this, and is it then attainable? Shouldn't you be doing something else? So they provide this business context, and they also are the link between development and other departments. Yeah? In our case, mostly with sales and marketing, because they can better collect what sales things should be developed, what should help our prospective customers, and communicate with marketing on when we are going to release what, so they can prepare some marketing buzz around it. And from developers' point of view, the change has been most substantial because everything got more complex. They have much greater responsibility, but they also have much greater impact of their work. Yeah, because they define their own goals. They decide on how they are going to meet those goals, like what feature would be best and what scope would be best to help us move towards the goals. And they also have the biggest impact on happy faces of our users, because they know them, they meet with them regularly, and they can see how they basically make their lives easier. And as you as designers, as you know, that is very addicting. So what changed for UX designers? Finally, I'm getting there. Few more slides. 3 things. First, scope of the design. I talked about this a bit. First, the same changes were subtle at first, yeah? But the first thing that changed was the scope, not doing big things, moving in smaller steps, deciding or helping the team decide what the next small steps should be. Should be left, right, to the depth, and that sort of things. The second is developers actually changed, not at first, gradually, as they got more and more customer contact. They got more business context. They changed. And first time I noticed, some time ago, it was on some kind of a planning meeting, and suddenly we were talking about some very technical feature, something with APIs. I don't really have knowledge about it, but suddenly one developer said, we need to prioritize this feature because I talked with this customer and they needed to finish this project. And suddenly another developer said, okay, but the customer I talked to also needs to have connection to API in there. and suddenly 5 developers were talking about how they would help the best our customers. And it was magical when I saw it for the first time. It's absolutely normal today. The third thing was that everything changed. Because, or I'm kidding, basically development goals really changed and when we got the data and they got the context and stuff, but that changed everything. Story time. So I will kind of try to explain this on one feature that was already done in the PDP2 process. It's called content groups. It's very simple functionality. Peter here designed it. I will simplify it very much. So the content groups. It's super simple feature. It's basically tabs. It allows you to organize your content elements into categories under tabs, so you can have you don't have so long list, and you can group things that belong together. Yeah, using them is easy. They are tabs. You click them, they show what's under them. But defining what elements should be under each tab, that is tricky because it is done by someone else and somewhere else and in completely different context. So when the team was first designing the solution, how they would do basically the first iteration for customers, there were 3 options. I don't even remember the middle one because it got skipped. But we were suggesting tabs. Yeah? Let's go to the definition interface and let's mimic what the end user see. Let's mimic it for the user that is setting it up, so it would be easy to understand. No switching metaphors and components. But developers tried to do it and said that it is very expensive, yeah, from some technical reasons. So the cheapest solution was do it in accordion. So when the person was defining what tabs there would be for end users, they would basically create accordion menu, yeah, and create new levels in the accordion and put the things there, and then for end users it would transform into tabs. So for the first iteration, the teams, developers, they have the responsibility. So they decided to go with accordion because it was the cheapest solution. And although they believed, our designer, that it probably will not have the best usability, they still wanted it to get the first feedback as fast as possible. So that was the reasoning, kind of. So they did the accordion solution very quickly. They released it very quickly, and then they saw how users are using it. Also, usability testing was done on the released feature with real users on their real projects, and basically the results very early showed that traction for the people that just see the tabs, that are just using them, was great. Yeah, people who had the tabs defined were using them and they loved them. But it turned out that almost no one took the effort to design the tabs for their users to use the. Basically, people didn't understand the accordion and how it transfers to the tabs. We saw it in data. Usability testing confirmed it on real cases, but at least it was very soon for the feature. So there was going to be second iteration, and then there were many more. Yeah. But what was interesting was that the team decided to skip the middle variant. That's why I don't remember it. And decided to go for the most expensive option right away. It took much more time than it would otherwise, but that wasn't the problem because everyone knew that with such a bad usability in the setup interface, there would never be adoption of the feature. So there would be no point in doing it. and the feature was needed. The problem with long content lists was real. So they did it and invested about at least a month just to do the tabs control, and the results were great. It's like most adopted features right now. Everyone is using the content groups, and there is no difficult like tutorial or something that would tell people how to set them up. It's just so intuitive that when people are starting to use the product, they just set them up, and they work as they expect. Yeah. So the takeaway here is that when developers wanted to achieve some adoption, then they, by themselves, decided to improve UX. Yeah, because without it, they would not get the adoption, they would not get their goals. And designer played integral role in this endeavor, because without designers, they would maybe do much more iterations, or maybe they would abandon content groups right away because they wouldn't see the adoption. Now designer was able to tell them what is wrong and how it could be fixed, so they tried to do it and they succeeded. So in the past, UX was always something external, yeah, something tacked on to developers. It was something that tried to impose change from outside on development processes, and that could never work. Now, with this change, when developers have business-oriented goals involving adoption and stuff, then we are no longer an outside force. We are integral for developers to meet their business goals, to hit their targets. So, like, this is also something that changed. Yeah? Questions UX people now get from developers. So it's in this tone, like, why are the users behaving this way? Why are they not using this feature? And subsequently, how can we change their behavior? How can we improve our functionality so they would adopt it? And these are exactly the questions UX designers should be getting, because they are the ones who can best answer them. Yeah? And it is happening. So summary just for the UX part. Always remember that companies have UX to meet business goals. If product development has business-oriented goals, UX becomes natural part of development. UX team is not doing many things differently than before, still research, design, usability testing and stuff. Yet we have much bigger impact on actual user experience than we ever had, because the user experience is needed, and it's not possible to have bad user experience because the goals would not be met. So important part is we are not doing researches and designs and testings for ourselves, for recording some output somewhere, but we are doing them for developers who can actually change things, and we are doing it to help them meet their business goals. And that makes UX teams or UX designers in our company vital and impactful. So another summary. Back to what product development process 2.0 brought us, like to Kendigo content. So we deliver more and better fitted functionality. A year ago, our HR and marketing teams who are trying to use our products for their jobs, they try to avoid using Kendigo content wherever they could. Because it was very bad for them. It was full of features, but you couldn't achieve anything from their workflows. Now they like it. They don't love it yet. We will get there. Use it.
Last 6 months we do.
Yeah. So just for the records, our HR person who uses Kendigo content says that she loves it. So good job, guys, on the phone. Our developers are actually more satisfied. We are doing some regular satisfaction surveys for our development teams, and they are much more satisfied than a year ago when we were starting with the change. A year ago, the change was like 4 NPS score was 4, and now it's like, I don't know, 18 or 28. I think 28, probably. That's better. Customers are also happier, and UX people have bigger impact on what we do, and that impact is driven by business needs, which also has the another consequence, like we are not improving UX just to improve UX. Yeah? We are not investing more and more just so it looks nicer or is better, unless it has some business reason behind it. So it's something that limits developers, product managers, and designers as well. So in the past, when developers improved something on UX side of things, they would say, yeah, we did this because designers wanted it, and they wanted it so much that they persuaded us to finally do it. But today, they would say, like, we need to have good UX. Yeah? That's not even the question. Without it, we wouldn't be able to meet our goals. The company would not meet its goals. So it's completely a different story. So to summarize, not the whole presentation yet, UX department used to be something external, something tacked on. Now it is integral tool in basically reaching or achieving business goals of the company. That has changed by changing how our product development works. So what would I advise to the designer from the 150 slides earlier? What would I tell them? Yeah? How could he, in this example, how could he make bigger impact? If I was starting over, I would say start with data. Yeah. Because what you need to do is to take a look in how is UX connected to business goals of the company. Is there a clear connection? Probably not if you are not making impact. Are you able to tell how UX influences business-related metrics like adoption, retention, engagement? And when I say how UX influences, I mean like your particular activities, like I did this design or something has changed and it brought us this many users in adoption or something. There probably is no connection. Does your company even have data on these metrics? Is it even able to get them? Yeah? And if it is not, how does your company know that the feature has been successful or not? So that is where I would advise to start, to understand where you stand. So your company, including you, needs to know where you are, what features are used, and how much and by whom. It might be difficult to get this data in certain contexts, like when your product is not running in a cloud, it's installed on premise, you can't get the usage data, maybe. But there's always a way how it can be done. Yeah? You can pick some few select customers that are representative and do periodical field studies with them. What's important is that there's always a way how to solve, how to get the data. Yeah? But first you need to get the decision that yes, we are going to get the data, and how will come later. So you will definitely need help, probably, because you might need to get stakeholders involved in order to maybe implement some tracking into the product, or help you get those customers you will be doing field studies with. Yeah? So you might need to convince those stakeholders. And how do you convince them? They usually work in much more business context, so you need to use business arguments to convince them. You cannot just tell them, hey, I want to improve UX, we need to invest in here and here and here. Instead, you need to ask them, or maybe suggest them, what they would be able to do if they had the data, if they had the answers. Yeah? Because if your company had the data, they, as product development stakeholders, would be able to get an idea on return of investment. They would be able to tell whether they need to keep investing into something and whether they should be investing somewhere else. They would be able to tell, is it worth improve this feature and how? Maybe only part of it is being used and some small improvement will bring better adoption. Maybe it will not, but they will never know until they have the data. It would enable them to use the iterative approach, because if they would release a small change to some customers, then they would need to find out what impact of the change was, what was good, what was bad, and that cannot be done without data. And of course, it would help the stakeholders of those stakeholders to connect whole company's business into this black box that product development usually is. Yeah, it would bring some clarity. So if you manage to convince stakeholders that they need this data and they get data and they see the data, then they will come to you and they will say, okay, we can see this feature has low adoption. You are the designer. Why is that? What can we do to increase the adoption? Yeah, and when that happens, then you can start making bigger impact in your company. You will be on the right track, and on the start, you might not need to have all the other changes we did with PDP2. Yeah, like you might need feedback loops probably, but you might not need developers closer to customers, developers using OKRs, or I don't know. That may come later. What comes later will be specific for your environment, but you will be on start. So this is final conclusion of the whole presentation, finally. So some takeaways. Always remember that to make bigger UX impact, you need to connect UX with business. If you are able to demonstrate this link, ideally, or as I think would be ideal using the usage data, you can show how the business metrics, adoption, retention stuff can be improved by improving UX. You can convince stakeholders by using business arguments, not just we need to improve UX, but here are these changes that will happen to our business. It's important to say that it will, of course, take time and effort. It took us 18 months before we converted all the development. The start could have been much faster. We could start with the pilot earlier, perhaps, but still it was a lot of convincing, a lot of designing processes, and a lot of time. If you are not sure, you can come to us, and us, I mean Kendico, and Kendico content specifically, because we've been doing this and it has been working, so we can show you how we operate in different departments, how UX works, how product management works, how development works, how they work together. so you can get some ideas. And that's it. Now you hopefully know better how to make a bigger impact. So go out there, change things. Thank you. Yeah, took some time, sorry. But now it's time for your questions. So I will try to get to Slido. And I will try to get my cursor here. And Slido. And maybe Zoom. There are questions. Nice. So, okay, let's start by answering the question. So, first is from Veronica. How can a UX designer at job interview spot that UX has a big impact on the company? And what are the red flags that it's the other way around? That's easy. That's easy. Thanks for the question. Basically, any designer, when you are a designer and you are looking for a job in a company, you should always ask the company to describe how the design operates within their product. Yeah? What do designers do? How they impact the product? How they impact the business, maybe. So you should get like idea on how it works and how you would work there. Then you should be able to see if you will be just doing lots and lots of prototypes and then you will just throw them away, or whether you will be part of some business decisions, you will watch metrics, and you will work in iterations and directly with customers. So just find out how UX operates in their product development processes. That's the answer, I hope. So another question is, it looks great if you already have good position in the company, but what would you do if you were just UX team of one, as in the first example you mentioned? I would try to convince the stakeholders. It's true that I have great position here, which means I am one of the 3 stakeholders deciding on how the product operates. So it got things much easier. But I still had to convince the other ones to do things in a certain way. Yeah? Because although they all saw that there is a problem, at first we weren't sure how to approach the problem, how to tackle it. So they still had to be lots of convincing. So I would advise still try to locate the stakeholders, maybe try to identify one that might be more susceptible to UX, more friendly to UX, or more like depressed by the current state of things, and try to talk business arguments with them. And you might get buy-in from one person, and then this one person will be your advocate and will help with other stakeholders. Yeah, I don't really have better advice here. There definitely may be companies where this will be too difficult or impossible, but I would definitely suggest you try. And if it's not working, probably try to look somewhere else, because it's not good working in such an environment for mental health. Okay, next question, Matouš. Who was the main driver, responsible person for changes in the process? Was it you as a VP, some designer, PM, or some other manager? Well, I was the one who first designed the processes. Yeah? that compiled stuff and decided this is how the people will work together, how they will interface together, and this will be inputs, outputs, and stuff. So that was me. But fortunately, the VP of product development or development director, not sure now, basically head of all the developers, bought it very, very nicely, and he single-handedly, not easily, there was the pushback, but he just changed the development himself. He made developers to change. So it was more people, and the responsibility was kind of shared. I was driving it in the beginning. Then there was it was driven more by other stakeholders. Yeah. Okay, next question, Anna. When the development focuses on delivering features over short periods of time, how do you go about bigger features for which a short time is not enough? It's not about they will do a feature in a short time. It's about they will do a small part of the feature in a short time. They can repeat this and build very large features like we are working on right now with Web Spotlight and Spaces, but we are building them gradually. Yeah, we have, in the beginning, we might have some vision from what we know from our customers, like the most high-level problems they want to solve, and we are gradually and in a relatively fast way building or adding blocks and small pieces that will get us somewhere. Maybe it will be to our vision. Maybe we will stop midway because we will be where we want to be. And maybe customer feedback and iterating will steer us somewhere else. Yeah, but it's nothing against larger features. You just build them block by block. I hope that answers the question. And next one, Matouš again. You have been talking a lot about delivery and evaluation phase of PDP. How do you cover the discovery phase to uncover new opportunities? The development teams, they usually get some kind of higher level objectives, yeah? And that objective is most probably owned by product management, and it might be very, very high level, like product management decides that they want to invest into acquisition and of new customers, of course, and that they will their objective of the product managers would be like, I don't know, maybe help get us 5 customers from some kind of vertical. Like, let's help get us or win us customers from that are banks maybe, or insurance companies, or something like that. So that's high level objective owned typically by product management. And then there are some development team allocated to work on these high-level objectives. And each development team will typically create their own objective, how they will support this high level. Yeah? So one team, they will do some exploration, and there's lots of time in the beginning where developers are not developing but participating on user research, doing synthesis, analysis, and design workshops and whatever. And they will just take a look at what they could do that they think will help with the top level goal the best. Yeah, it will typically be we will try to implement some new functionality, we will try to solve this problem, or we will enhance something we already have. And they will work in some kind of exploration mode. Yeah? So first they identify what they could do, then they iteratively try to verify that that is something that they should be doing, and that can be done by even without any development. Yeah? Basically, they can talk to customers. They can find out that what if we solved this problem for them this way. So maybe designer with them will prepare just simple presentable prototype in Excel or Sketch or anywhere, and I just go and ask customers, okay, what if we do this? And they get some kind of feedback, and they will learn, are we going possibly the right way, or should we try to do something completely different? So there can be phases in the beginning of working on certain objectives where nothing gets done, like released, but the team is learning. So kind of complicated answer, but I hope it works. Another question, how did you deal with the pushback from developers' side to the new way of working? We try to communicate, to over-communicate, to address all their feedback, their fears, their remarks, and so on. Biggest pushback didn't come from developers, but from product managers, because they were losing this power of deciding on what is getting implemented and in what scope. So, and of course, the product managers, since they had such a big influence until that time on the development team, so if they pushed back, developers pushed back. Yeah? So we try to communicate, try to address things, explain. Sometimes it was heated, but eventually the thing that really did the trick was the pilot, because after some time of this explaining and arguing and whatever, we just saw that we are running in circles and we are moving nowhere. So we said, okay, let's do the pilot. That will prove either that your fears are true or that our glorious vision is true. So when they tried to do it, they either saw it themselves because they were in the pilot, or if they weren't part of the pilot, they saw it for their colleagues. So they watched the colleagues, they talked with them, and they saw that it's not such a tragedy as they feared originally. So over communication will help, but it will get you somewhere. And the thing that really helped was just trying to do it, and it would either fail or it would work, and it worked. Okay.
If I may, I have a few questions.
Yes.
For example, we have a role of Scrum Master. Do you have a Scrum Master in your team, for example? Because you mentioned product owner, so developers, designers, and Scrum Master.
Yeah. So just for others on the call, the question was whether we have Scrum Masters in product development and what role they have. We don't have Scrum Masters anymore. We used to have them in the older process, but we have kind of figured out with the new process that they are not needed. Yeah, the tasks that they were doing in the old process either vanished or just team was able to handle them. So we now only have 3 Scrum Master-like roles for the company. They are called Agile Rangers. They are not attached to any teams. They are not managing developers. They are just coaching teams, basically, to try to come over any obstacles they encounter, basically. Yeah, because the PDP2 works very well business-wise, but it's still not easy. By no means.
Yeah, and for example, which agile tools do you use? Because you mentioned some agile way you are using.
So what agile tools are we using? Do you mean like Jira or like software. Yeah, we are using the Atlassian suite. So it's Jira, Confluence, other stuff for work tracking. Yeah, basically. We are still using those. Okay, thank you for the questions. Any other questions in here?
Maybe how did you handle Corona isolation? Because it was a big topic in our company also.
Yeah. Funny topic. Yeah. We already had before Corona. Because quarantine meant home office for us. Yeah, and how home office had been handled before Corona was that on Fridays everyone could take home office automatically, and on other days it was on basically permission from your boss. Yeah? And some people, some managers in the company really did not believe that if there was more home office, that the productivity would remain the same. Yeah? But and this idea or this thing was still prevalent like in March, early March. But then it started to look like that there is actually pandemics and there will be quarantine. So even the people who were kind of against home office at that time just said, no, we cannot risk it, that we will get caught. We will just have to handle it. So like 2 days before the quarantine was declared, we already closed the company and told everyone that look, don't come to company from tomorrow. Since tomorrow, take any hardware, tables, chairs, whatever you might need for your homework, and work from home. We have, by the way, nice article on this topic on our HR blog, and it's in Czech. But anyway, when we started working from home, just suddenly from one day to another, everyone was at home. It took like 2 weeks until it settled, and people learned how to work, how to have meetings, how to communicate, and everything. It still wasn't easy for many people because they also had their kids home. They didn't have like their study where they could work, so they were in the kitchen or so. But actually, the productivity didn't go down at all. And April was a month where we released record number or record amount of functionality. We released so many changes, or more changes than any time else in history, even in the middle of the quarantine. So so it was working fine, and when the quarantine was cancelled, and we were thinking about how we are going to continue when it was working from home, but there were concerns like okay, what if half people is at home, half people is at work? Will it work still? So we are going on some kind of a test run until the end of August, and then we will see. And how we work now is it's based on every individual team. So basically people in a team, so those 3 or 4 developers, for example, their designer, their product manager, they have one condition, and that condition is meet in the office at least once a week, and the rest of the days you can work from home. So that's something what we are trying now. Lots of people are still in the office because they don't have good working environment at home, but it gives people bigger choice. Yeah? And at the end of August, we will see if there were major issues, or whether we will keep it, or whether we will even introduce even more freedom, perhaps. That's how we are working. Any other questions? It was long, I know. If not, then thank you again for coming and for bearing with me for 2 hours, and see you around.